A brand promise is a message to consumers about what they can expect from a company or a brand. But keeping that brand promise consistently from experience to experience is sometimes a bit of a challenge. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm joined by Cheyenne Terbrueggen, Marketing Communications Manager at Elephant's Delicatessen, or Elephants, as customers like me like to call it. I'm a big fan, and I can't wait to talk about Elephants, but particularly your brand promise. So Cheyenne, let's start there. What is the brand promise at Elephant's Delicatessen?
Well, luckily, I feel like our brand promise is stated right up front, and we put it everywhere because it's our tagline. And that's great local foods from scratch since 1979.
You know what I love about that promise, and where I think it speaks to me as a consumer, is when I was first discovered Elephants, I was traveling a lot to Portland on business. And one of the challenges about business travel is that you are, eating out once in a while is nice. It's a treat, but 3 meals a day for a whole week, that can be a bit much. And I was looking for good, healthy meals that were nutritious, tasted good, and didn't weigh me down with too much sugar, too much sodium. And that's how I discovered Elephants. And what I like about your brand promise is it spoke directly to the problem that I was solving, which is good local food that kind of tasted like it was home cooked. So I imagine that's by design.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting. It's one of those, I'm often asked, and we discuss changing our tagline. And actually, when I interviewed for this job 7 years ago, one of the things our CEO and owner asked me to do was come up with a tagline alternative as an exercise. They wanted me to come up with 5 alternatives. And I came up with 5 different taglines and then told them, really honestly, I feel like great local foods from scratch hits it right on the, here are the 5 you asked for. I wouldn't change that tagline at all. And I'm always kind of, when people want to freshen it up, we always come back to, excellence in everything that we do in service, but especially in the quality of our food, the great local food part of it, the great food. You're looking for, so that great local foods, not only is the quality of the food going to be great, but about 90% of our main suppliers to Elephants are located within 200 miles of our stores. So the local is a commitment. And when it started in 1979, it was a commitment, and it's a commitment now. And then you have the excellence of the food, and from scratch, we make everything ourselves. So the bread is coming from the bakery. Everything you eat is something that we've made. And so the great local foods from scratch. And to me, since 1979, tells me this company's been doing this a really long time. And it's part of this community. It's been a part for a really long time. So when you put all that together, it does. It seems it's basic and it's straightforward and it's friendly. All things we also want to be. It's approachable. I feel like Elephants always wants to be approachable and really welcoming. So as many times as I've tried to come up with a better tagline that states what we do, I just can't. I can't come up with one, which, I do think about it though. I think about it a lot. And I think the other thing is that Elephants we do a lot of different things. We have retail stores. We do catering and events. So, we cater weddings and we cater corporate lunches, and we do so many things. We do wholesale. So you can go to OHSU, or you can go to the Portland airport, or now at New Seasons and find something from Elephants. So we do so many different things. It's nice to have a really descriptive, straightforward tagline. Like, as much as I love a catchy tagline and I want to come up with catchy things, and it's fun to do that, but man, that tagline just really, often people are like, gosh, Elephants does so many things, kind of overwhelmed. What are you again? Or if any of our employees are talking about our company, you can always come back to that great local. Well, we make food. What's outstanding about it or different about it is everything we use is local. Everything we do is from scratch. We've been doing it for 42 years now. So if you can memorize the tagline and if you can know it, that helps you answer the question, what do you do?
Well, and there's a few things that I think you shared that are important for listeners to understand. And one is it's okay to revisit your tagline or your brand promise. It's probably
It's a great exercise.
and it's amazing that you've come back to us and said, no, this is still rings true. This is still valid for us today. The other thing I think as a consumer and as a fan of the brand, a good brand promise really speaks to a specific problem that a customer is trying to solve. And for me, it's exactly that. I want local foods. I want foods made from scratch to have that homemade type of quality. I mean, even right now, I'm craving some tomato orange soup, and it's so far away. I'm in San Diego. You're so far away from me. I can't wait until my next visit, because it's comfort food. It feels good. And I think crafting a brand promise statement that speaks directly to a particular issue, it's an important exercise. So I'm glad you stuck with it.
Well, and internally, I know you asked, I think the only a question you asked me when we very first talked before this was what, like for a tip or a takeaway when it comes to a brand promise, as it has to do with taglines. And I think a lot about training our new employees. And the tagline, if your employees don't know your tagline, then you're probably like, that's, I think, the most important thing. So it's important for the consumer, it is, but we also have, 250 employees, and I can tell you that they know our tagline. And it's not important because I need them to go around talking about taglines. But again, when they think about our company and our values, so actually, and this is something consumers don't see, but they should feel, that our 3 core values are excellence, community, and sustainability. And so when I think of that tagline, I see excellence. I see community there too. The great local foods from scratch. I mean, a lot of it's a commitment to our local community and to buying from people that are our neighbors, so that when you're supporting us, you're supporting the entire, the entire Portland community, because that's where the food, our ingredients are coming from. So to me, that's there. And then the sustainability, it's sustainability in terms of being responsible neighbors and how we use resources, but it's also sustainability in terms of we've been doing this for a really long time. So I almost see that there too. Oh, look, my cat's joined us. Oh, darn.
You've got to help her.
Yeah. All right, you. So I like it. Also, I just think, like, when people come on board and they're learning about our company, we talk about our history, we talk about the food, and our chef, they're hearing from everyone in our company about this and about these values. So I do think it also helps when you join the company, that everyone at Elephants should know that it is about great food. They should know about the quality of the food and how it's made. And then the night, oh my gosh, he usually won't even hang out with me if I'm working from home. So he must know that this is an opportunity to get on film. But I think that also to us is like, I don't know, it's kind of a guiding, sort of it provides guidance, I think, and just a common understanding, actually.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, because I think one of the disconnects I often see is someone in marketing owns the tagline, shepherds it, communicates it externally. No one else in the organization knows about it. And to your point, if employees don't know about it, how can they fulfill it? How can they keep that promise? But it sounds like you're really deliberate about ensuring employees are aware of it and using it to guide their actions. It starts with new hires. It starts in training. What else are you doing to ensure this is top of mind in people's daily work?
It's interesting. Even if I'm writing, I come back to that tagline. If I'm thanking customers, I use it a lot. I mean, it's probably, I've even done advertisements that are just the tagline. As much as I love using food photos, I I do love the tagline. And it's funny, I was our CEO and owner was doing a little brief interview, and she kept asking me, was that good? What else should I say? What else should I talk? How should I describe our company? And I said, use the tagline. But I reminded her, I said, everything we do that's important for people to know is in the tagline. So she's worked at the company for 41 years, but I still reminded her to come back to the tagline. All right, buddy, come here. But it was funny. I'm like, everything we do is in the tagline. Look to the tagline, which is entirely true. So it just kind of centered her again. And this is somebody that knows the company, but when there's, she was feeling a little, there's so much to say. When there's so much I could say, what's the one thing I should say? And so I will often even remind people of that. Like, don't forget to actually use the tagline. It's helpful. You don't have to use it like a tagline, but look to it because it's there. What do we want people to really know about us? What's top of mind? So I often break it down and use those talking points when I need to as well. Quick, what do I want people to know about this company?
I often compare it to a compass, and sometimes you get lost if you're driving or hiking, and you just need to know what's the right direction, and the tagline is the right directions. Like, go back to that.
Well, because I could be like, we do catering and we do, and we have a store here, and like I could kind of, it could get real big real fast,
right?
And it's like, oh wait, we make
those are the things you do.
What's the basics?
But what's the basics? And I like the reminder that even your executives need reminders that this should be it's easy to forget in the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So
so what do you order when you get food from elephants? I'm curious.
It really is the one of my staples was the tomato orange soup, because that was
okay. That's a classic.
It not only is it a classic, and for those who are listening who've not been to elephants or maybe not in the Portland area, one of the things that I appreciated, certainly it's in some sense it's a traditional delicatessen. So I would often, maybe my client would order sandwiches for lunch. So I would have elephants for lunch, and then for dinner, I want something light. And so soup and a salad's kind of the classic light meal. And to be able to go into elephants and get a really good bowl of soup and maybe a nice fresh salad, and have the option of, this is pre-COVID, the option of a nice casual place to enjoy it, or take it with me back to the hotel very easily. That was kind of that was a good meal. It was tasty and it didn't weigh me down, which that was the problem I'm trying to solve. I think sometimes from a consumer standpoint, we think of like fresh and local as being trendy. But
no, that's true.
I can tell you as a consumer, I think of fresh and local as being tasty and healthy and not weighing me down. It really feels like, oh, I had a good meal, but I don't feel the repercussions of a bad meal out, if that makes sense.
Our chef owner, Chef Scott, would be happy to hear that. He is always looking for something that he always refers to our burger, our cheeseburger that we serve at our locations with grills, as a burger you can eat for lunch. And that's always been kind of his goal, is to make something you could eat and then not feel bad or need to take a nap afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that I'm glad that you get that from our brand. I do think it's interesting. I think the 1979, it's funny you mentioned kind of the great local food from scratch. When we started doing that 42 years ago, not everyone was doing that.
Right.
Which is why it's interesting to me. I don't think the tagline works nearly as well since 1979 on it. Because it's sort of a distinguisher. Because even the great local food from scratch, you're in Portland, Oregon. So you're going to be able to find that now. Yeah. But I mean, we've been doing that for, over 4 decades. That's where I think sometimes people are like, gosh, we should do something kind of different now. And it's like, I think some things, it's such the core of who we are and what we do. And yes, we cater fancy weddings and events, but that doesn't necessarily, the great local food from scratch since 1979 still supports that. So even as we change and have different offerings, it's still coming down to the very core values of our company, which are in that tagline, the very basics, the building blocks of what we do.
So as a customer, as a fan, one of the things that I appreciated is, I think you're right that, local food is somewhat readily available, but not necessarily in your particular segment, whether it's deli or fast casual.
Yeah.
I didn't find many options in that segment. I just want a quick meal. I don't want to go out to fine dining. I want a quick meal that's healthy and tasty and affordable. And I didn't see a lot of options besides elephants. Maybe I was just missing that, but that was the nice thing to me. It was like, elephants is like, we're going to solve this problem for you. We got you.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really use a lot of secondary taglines in marketing, but our Flying Elephants locations are more food for folks on the fly. I always think about it. So I have actually used like great food for folks on the fly at a Flying Elephants, because it's all grab and go.
Yeah.
And I used it a lot more in this past year, to be honest, that message, just because we were well poised for people to grab and go this past year, since there hasn't been a lot of, dining on premises. So having our food kind of ready made that you can grab it and go has been, really important. But that's sort of when you said that you just looked for something kind of healthy and homemade that you could grab, sounded like you were maybe on the run, maybe at an airport. So I thought, oh yeah, he's on the fly.
That's it. And sometimes I was, and again, it becomes a nice solution. I think we have time for one last question. And one thing I want to make sure we get to is the connection between the tagline and not just what our employees are aware of it, but maybe some of the product choices that keep that promise. So for example, like going back to kind of the food and the menu or your chef, how do those decisions, what do we put on the menu, influence whether or not you're keeping your promise?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I'm thinking back to, we do a lot of special holiday meals. So our menu is interesting, and that there are things like tomato orange soup that we couldn't take off the menu, and we wouldn't, because they're big sellers and we've been making them for decades and people expect to see them. But when we do catering for like weddings and other events, we're always creating custom menus. And just recently, like for Valentine's Day, we created a custom menu, and we came up with a lot of different ideas. We have a menu team and work with our chef and other marketing's part of that. We're all part of it. And we kind of talk about options. And we came up with a lot of great options that just ended up not making sense because of what was available from our suppliers. So we do that is a pretty key component to the menus that we create. So if our, chefs reach out and they're like, this just doesn't look good, like, we're not doing tomatoes right now, or we do have to look and see we have to be guided by what's available and what our suppliers have. And there's been many a time that we've come up with a menu idea that we just end up not executing because we talk to a produce provider and they're like, man, that's not great right now. So we have to go, back to the drawing board. We would rather do that than purchase something outside of those local parameters. So even when we're planning with people for events that are, say a year ahead, we could do a sample menu and get down to a lot of great ideas. But ultimately, it's going to come down to what is quality. So what's great and what's local. So if it's on our menu, like right now, we really wanted to do these strawberry muffins this week and start them, and we can't because we can't get great strawberries. So we're going to have to stick. We can get good blueberries right now. So we're doing blueberry sour cream muffins instead of strawberry muffins. But, that was our plan, and it just didn't just didn't pan out. So, even though we're a larger location in that we're a larger restaurant company, we have multiple locations, we still very much operate as a small cafe would have to operate if they're really committed to using even though we have a large central kitchen, like anyone else who's kind of cooking fresh local food here in Portland, we are limited in wonderful ways to what is fresh and in season and what tastes great right now.
Well, I can tell you the commitment is obvious. It's very clear, and I enjoy visiting elephants any chance I get. Cheyenne, for those folks who are not in Portland, obviously they have to plan a trip to Portland. They have to visit elephants. How do they track you all down?
Elephantsdeli.com. And we have 8 locations in Portland. We actually also sell our food through Williams Sonoma nationwide. So you can get our tomato orange soup if you're in New York. And you can get our lasagna if you're in Florida. So you can also find that information at elephantsdeli.com.
Oh, that sounds good. I have an order to place later today. Cheyenne, thanks so much for joining me. I really
Thank you.